Generally speaking, it's tough for most movies to come up with even a single truly great, memorable villain. And so the prospect of a movie delivering not one but two killer villains seems nigh on impossible for all but the most accomplished filmmakers. So with that in mind then, I'm Ellie with What Culture here with 10 movies that had two incredible villains. Number 10. The Joker and Two-Face in The Dark Knight. Christopher Nolan's The Dark Knight is of course best remembered for the late Heath Ledger's phenomenal Oscar-winning performance as the Joker, delivering a definitive take on the clown prince of crime that felt so perfectly suited to the gritty world of Nolan's superhero trilogy. Yet Ledger's performance casts such a large shadow over the film that it's easy to forget about its second major antagonist, the corrupted DA Harvey Dent, aka Two-Face. Even with Dent's downfall being tightly packed into the movie's third act, Nolan executes a highly compelling, tragic arc for Two-Face, abetted by a criminally underappreciated performance from Aaron Eckhart, and some outstandingly gnarly makeup and visual effects to create his traumatic facial injury. Nolan could have simply focused the film on the Joker and delivered a classic movie, but he dared to give us a second all-timer interpretation of an iconic comic book villain, and absolutely knocked it out of the park. Considering most superhero movies struggle to do justice to a single antagonist, Nolan made this 1-2 punch look absolutely effortless. Number 9. Auric Goldfinger and Oddjob in Goldfinger. Though almost every single James Bond film features at least two villains, generally speaking, one tends to be much better than the other. And it's rare that the franchise has ever served up two genuinely great baddies in the same movie. But Goldfinger is the outlier that proves lightning can strike twice in the same spot, as it delivers a duo of antagonists who remain two of the most iconic and beloved in the series' entire six-decade history. First and foremost, we have the gold-obsessed megalomaniac Auric Goldfinger, the devilishly entertaining psychopath with a wildly convoluted plan who basically set the template for so many classic Bond villains that followed. He also lays claim to perhaps the most legendary villain one-liner in the entire series. "No, Mr. Bond, I expect you to die." Goldfinger's second in command is no slouch either. His Korean manservant Oddjob is best remembered for his penchant for sharp suits and throwing sharper, razor-tipped bowler hats, serving as the perfect brute force accompaniment to Goldfinger's Machiavellian scheming. Almost 60 years on, the Bond franchise has never achieved a better supervillain henchman pairing than this. Number 8. Clarence Boddicker and Dick Jones in RoboCop. Paul Verhoeven's original RoboCop features two of the most easily to loathe villains in cinema history, and tellingly, they've both got the word Dick in their names. First off, there's Clarence Boddicker, an ultra-violent criminal who murders Alex Murphy at the start of the film and basically sets his cybernetic transformation in motion. Boddicker is a sadistic a-hole, played with tenacious, detestable relish by the great Kurtwood Smith, his cruelty and devaluation of human life knowing no bounds. If you saw Smith in that 70s show before watching RoboCop, it proves quite the eye-opening experience. But Boddicker is ultimately working for Megacorp OCP's senior president Dick Jones, who has overseen the dystopian privatization of Detroit's police force and the creation of the ED-209 pacification robot. Willing to murder anyone who threatens to usurp his position without blinking, and gladly in bed with Detroit's ugliest criminals, Jones could easily be a caricature of a corrupt, greedy corporate executive. And yet Ronnie Cox plays the part with enough dogged intensity that he still seems absolutely plausible. Needless to say, both Boddicker and Jones suffer fittingly violent, cathartic deaths by RoboCop's hand at film's end, stabbed through the throat and shot out of a skyscraper window, respectively. Number 7. Hannibal Lecter and Buffalo Bill in The Silence of the Lambs. The Silence of the Lambs boasts one of the greatest villainous twofers ever, because while the primary antagonist is terrifying serial killer Jane Buffalo Bill Gum, the more iconic villain is undeniably the suave, initially incarcerated cannibal Hannibal Lecter. The pair are a perfect example of a bad guy duo that brilliantly contrasts and complements each other. On the one hand, we've got Buffalo Bill, the more overtly psychopathic and theatrical of the two killers, while Lecter is far more more coolly composed and cerebral. That is until he explodes into brief bursts of savage violence. While Lecter does help Clarice Starling throughout the story, we're never under the illusion that he's aiding her for anything more than his own curiosity and amusement. If you're somehow convinced he's anything but a villain, wait until he disembowels a guard and wears another face. Though Anthony Hopkins' Oscar-winning portrayal is the more iconic of the two, Ted Levine's performance is itself terrifically chilling, ensuring there's a pervasive tenor of anxiety and unease throughout the entire runtime. Number 6. Agent Smith and the Machines in The Matrix. The Matrix delivered one of sci-fi's most iconic antagonists with the brilliant Agent Smith, a sentient program tasked with preventing humans from escaping the Matrix and dismantling the human resistance in Zion. On a macro level though, the bigger picture villains are really the machines, which created the Matrix as a means to enslave humanity inside a simulated reality and use their bodies as an energy source. Together they form an oppressive system of control that's fascinating to observe, Smith operating as the human antagonistic face, while the machines are the soulless, literally mechanical force imprisoning the majority of the human race. You could also throw Cypher in there as a tertiary villain, though his character arc is more complex than being a mere black and white bad guy. He is understandably tired of his grim reality and willing to kill in order to be reinserted into the illusory Matrix. Number 5. Captain Vidal and the Pale Man in Pan's Labyrinth. Guillermo del Toro's Pan's Labyrinth is a film that splits the difference so ingeniously between a dark fantasy fairy tale and a more matter-of-fact depiction of post-war Spain under General Franco's fascist rule. This divide is also perfectly exemplified by the movie's two major villains. On one hand, there's the Pale Man, the revolting child-eating monster who protagonist Ophelia faces off against in the titular Labyrinth. And in the real world, there's Captain Vidal, the sadistic phalangist officer and Ophelia's new stepfather. Both the Pale Man and Vidal are savage, horrifying monsters in their own ways. The Pale Man a more literal fairy-eating abomination with eyes in his hands, while Vidal is a grounded emblem of the atrocities humans inflict upon each other. In the film's most shocking scene, he kills a farmer by smashing his face to a pulp with a glass bottle. As with so many of the best villain pairings in cinema, contrast is key, and in turn, Del Toro services the fantastical and realist elements of the narrative equally well. Number 4. John Kramer and Amanda Young in Saw 2. The original Saw executed such a stunning and unexpected villain reveal that the Jigsaw killer was a cancer patient John Kramer, hidden in plain sight, that the sequel had to pull out all the stops to have a chance of living up to it. For the majority of the movie, it appears that Kramer is again working alone, no matter how implausible it might seem that a man increasingly ravaged by terminal cancer could set such a complex game up. But at the end of Saw 2, it's revealed that Kramer had a secret apprentice helping him run the game all along, Amanda Young, the drug addict who Kramer tested in the original movie. Amanda appears to be trapped in Jigsaw's new game throughout the film, though at the end it's revealed that she's been working with Jigsaw ever since she survived her original game, all with the intention of carrying on Kramer's legacy after he dies. Basically, she was put in Saw 2's central game as a ringer to keep nudging the test subjects in the right direction. It was a fun reveal that worked because the audience simply wasn't suspicious of Amanda at all, and though the secret apprentice twist was wildly overused in the later sequels, here it felt totally fresh. Number 3. Renee Belloc and Arnold Ernest Tote in Raiders of the Lost Ark. The Indiana Jones franchise has delivered a number of highly compelling and memorable villains across its 4 movies to date, though only Raiders of the Lost Ark offered up 2 genuinely brilliant, unforgettable bad guys in the same movie. On one hand, there's Indiana Jones's rival archaeologist Renee Belloc, effectively an evil mirror of Indy whose greed has put him in league with the Nazis. What he lacks in physical stature, he more than compensates for with his smarts and sheer cunning ruthlessness. Yet by far the more unnerving of the 2 major villains is Gestapo agent Major Arnold Tote, perhaps the most stereotypically German-looking person who has ever lived, no matter that actor Ronald Lacey was actually English. Nevertheless, Tote leaks creepiness from his every pore, his voice, piercing eyes, and general physical mannerisms combining to make him a peerlessly skin-crawling bad guy. That he gets one of the most badass gnarly deaths in all of cinema history, having his face melted clean off his skull by the Ark of the Covenant, is just the icing on the cake. Number 2. Billy Loomis and Stu Marker in Scream. 4 of the 5 Scream movies to date have eventually revealed that 2 people were working in tandem as the Ghostface killer, a twist that originated with the very first film in the series. Until the big third act reveal, audiences simply assumed that Ghostface was a single person, and Kevin Williamson's script does a fantastic job of misdirecting audiences as to both the dual killer twist and their identities. Eventually, it's revealed that Sydney's boyfriend Billy Loomis and his pal Stu Marker are the killers, a wildly unexpected revelation as suspicion was ingeniously cast on Billy earlier in the film and then dismissed with an alibi. Billy and Stu cleverly deflected suspicion away from themselves, yet in the loony third act they let their masks literally and figuratively slip in front of Sydney, revealing themselves to be the deranged murderers. It remains the strongest killer reveal in the series by far, and one that the franchise has continually tried to live up to. Just ignore the Scream 3 retcon, which revealed that Billy was actually working with that film's killer, Sid's half-brother Roman Bridger, all along. Number 1. The Xenomorph and Ash in Alien. Though Alien Xenomorph is really just a creature doing its thing, hunting and feeding, it is nevertheless the undeniable overarching threat to the lives of the Nostromo's crew. The Xenomorph of course went on to become one of the most iconic villains in cinematic history, and because that apparently wasn't enough, there's also a terrific secondary threat for Ripley and company to deal with, and that's Ash, the ship's science officer who is later revealed to be an android working on orders from the company, that is Weyland-Yutani, to keep the Xenomorph alive at all costs, while Ripley et al. Are considered expendable. The secondary villain is really Weyland-Yutani and their corporate greed then, but Ash is the physical immediate embodiment of it, played with fantastically detached menace by Ian Holm. The Alien franchise even pulled this off twice in a row, with Aliens quite brilliantly balancing the threat of the Xenomorphs with that of Weyland-Yutani's scumbag rep Carter Burke.